Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This morning's learning is sponsored by Yocheved and Rabbi Chaim Arzwan in memory of their son, Gabriel Yehuda ben Harav Chaim Zichron Bracha, on his 19th yortzeit. Just want to say that our family's, Braun family's connection with the Arzwans began with Gavi boarding at the Braun house for a number of years. My wife has very, very fond memories of him. The whole family does. And he was a person of really a very unique chen and character. And he should have Aliyat Neshama. And thank you to the Arzwans for allowing us to join in bringing schut to his neshama.
Thank you, Rabbi.
And there should be a continued neshama for the family. Thank you very
Amen.
much.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi.
We're going to begin with chapter 27, verse 26. Chapter 27, verse 26. We are going through the different curses right now. If you remember at the scene of Har Grizim and Har Evel, and it says in the pasuk, "Arur asher lo yakim es divrei haTorah hazos lasos osam." Cursed is the person who will not fulfill the words of this Torah to do them, and everyone answers amen. This sounds like a very broad one. I mean, this sounds like and all other mitzvot says otherwise determined. I mean, it sounds like a catch-all language in the country. We gave very specific curses. Now we said, and by the way, if you don't fulfill the words of the Torah, you should be cursed also. What's going on with this pasuk? Let's start with the Ramban. Ramban on pasuk Chavav. Aru asher lo yakim es divrei Torah azos. Kan kolal is kol Torah kula. Rashi says exactly. Here we're encompassing the entire Torah. The kiblu aleim ba'alo b'shvua lashon Rashi. So Rashi says, yeah, it's exactly what it sounds like. This is a catch-all for everything in the Torah, that there should be a curse on someone who doesn't fulfill anything in the Torah. Ulafi da'ati, the Ramban says, I think the pshat is ki hakabala azos, this acceptance, sheyoda b'mitzvos b'libo, that a person is saying that they admit that the mitzvos are indeed true. They recognize the truth of the mitzvos. V'yiyu be'einav emes, and that a person should view the mitzvos as being true. V'yamin, and a person should believe sha'osa son yelo schar v'tova v'over alein yonesh. Person should accept the belief that if a person does the mitzvos, they'll be rewarded, and if a person violates the commandments, they'll be punished. V'im yachbor ba'achas mehen o tiyeh be'einav b'teil liolam hinei hu arur. And if a person takes even one of the mitzvos and denies its truth, or says, the mitzvah doesn't apply, when it's supposed to apply, then the person is included in the arur. So the Ramban is understanding this differently than Rashi, whereas Rashi says this is general, and cursed be the person who doesn't observe any of the Torah. The Ramban is saying this is more a perspective. Does a person accept the truth of all of the Torah? And if the person doesn't accept the truth of all of the Torah, then this curse should apply to them. But if a person violated one of the commandments, let's say a person is very hungry one day, they're driving by and they see it, and there's a non-kosher restaurant. And it's not that they don't accept that the mitzvahs are true, they're just very hungry, right? So, and they go in and they buy food. So, and they eat it. So that was an Aveira. But says the Ramban, I don't think the person will be included in a curse. I think the person sinned and they have to do tshuva. And, if they don't do tshuva, they could be punished and so on and so forth. Whereas Rashi would say that the curse would apply in that case. The Ramban would say no, because the person accepts the mitzvos. They just had a moment of weakness. Oshlo asa sukkah v'lulav la'atzla. Or a person, was too lazy to sit in the sukkah if they were commanded to sit in the sukkah, or they were too lazy to file an order with Josh Breitstein for Lulav and Esrog. How about that for a plug? Something like that. So again, they came up short. There are consequences for coming up short, but it wouldn't be a curse. They're not included in this curse. Kilo Amar Akaso Sher Lo Yases Devrei Torah Azos Elo Amar Sher Lo Yakimis Devrei Torah Azos Lasos. Says the Ramban, look at the language of the pasuk. It doesn't say, cursed be the person who doesn't fulfill this Torah. That's not what it says in the pasuk. It says, cursed be the person who doesn't establish the Torah to do it. What's that language of establishing to do it? Yakim. And lasos katam kimu v'kiblu hayehudim. It's like the language we have in Megillas Esther. The Jews were mekayim, that they established v'kiblu and accepted upon themselves these obligations of whether it's talking about the Torah in general or the obligations of Purim, whatever the pshat is in the pasuk. But the Ramban says that's the meaning of this verse. It's an acceptance of mitzvos. It's not, does a person score 100 on the mitzvos any given day? This is the curse of people who actively rebel against God. God, I don't care that you gave this mitzvah, or I deny that you gave this mitzvah. In the Yerushalmi, it asks a very basic question. What do you mean, curses the person who doesn't stand up the Torah? Yakim is literally like to stand it up. So is there such a thing as a Torah that falls? Reb Shimon ben Yakim Omer, Zeh HaChazan. Reb Shimon ben Yakim says this refers to the person representing the congregation, meaning, this is a very famously quoted thing, if a person doesn't do Hagba well. In other words, if a person doesn't raise up the Torah in an appropriate way. Reb Shimon, I've always been more of a Glila guy myself. Reb Shimon ben Chalafta Omer Zeh Beis Din Shel Matan. Reb Shimon ben Chalafta has a very interesting one. Reb Shimon ben Chalafta says this refers to the rabbinic court. In other words, they have a responsibility to uphold the words of the Torah, to punish people when they don't do something right, to clarify things, and if they don't do it, then this curse goes on them. Demar of Yehuda of Rav Huna b'shem Shmuel al Davra Zeh Kara Yoshiyahu v'Yamar Alai Hakim. We speak about this normally on Tisha B'Av, as do many. The famous story of Yoshiyahu HaMelech, that he was a relatively young man. They found the Torah in the Beis Hamikdash and was open to this verse. Arash lo Yakim Divrei Torah Azos. And he tore his garments and he says, it's upon me to uphold the Torah. Meaning, Yoshio understood that the Jewish people were not observing the Torah correctly at this point. And Yoshio also understood that it was incumbent upon him as being a person in a position of authority to see to it that the Torah would be appropriately upheld. Amar Vasim Shir Tamchim Barchia Lamad V'Limeid V'Shamar V'Asav V'Yasafik V'Sivik V'Yod L'Hachzik V'Lo Hichzik Harezeh B'Chlal Arur. A very sharp quote from Rav Asi in the name of Rav Tanchum Barchia. If a person studies Torah and teaches Torah and observes the prohibitions of the Torah and keeps the positive mitzvahs of the Torah, and he had the ability to further strengthen observance, and he didn't, he's included in the Arur. So if there's something that a person can do to change the Torah observance in Klal Yisrael, and they don't, even if they're doing a lot of good stuff privately, even if they're doing a lot of good stuff for other people as well, but they're coming up short in, like, they could have done X or started a campaign and they didn't, the Arur includes them. So included in this, according to this idea, is the king, is the people in charge of Klal Yisrael that can fulfill, that can uphold the words of the Torah in a unique way and decline to. Even if a person was a great pious person, if a person was a big tzaddik, but they could have inspired others to live their lives differently, and a person didn't get into that at all, they're also included in the curse. Says the Ramban, it's not that different than what we spoke about, if you think about it. The Amru al Derech Haggadah, and there's also a medrash on this, Chazan, Sheinu Mekim Sifrei Torah La'amidon Kesaknan Shelo Yiplu. He cites the idea of he says there are those who explain that what it means, the Chazan, is it means the Gabai, and it means he should make sure to position the Torahs in a way that they're not going to fall. You have to have it set up in the Aron correctly. You have to have it, if the Torahs are out, you have to make sure they're in good position. And so I jumped the gun a little bit. Excuse me. And the Rambam says, I think what it means, it refers to the Chazan. Ala Chazan she'inu make him say for Torah latzibur laharos pnei ksivaso lakol. There's a big idea that when a person does Tagba, they're supposed to raise the Torah in a way that everybody can see the writing of the Sefer Torah. And so if a person doesn't do that, that's the person who didn't uphold the Torah. So, okay. So that's the pshat over here with this. So a number of ideas that the Ramban says, just to sum up what we saw in the Ramban. Rashi says this is a catch-all for all the mitzvahs. The Ramban says this is more an attitude towards the mitzvahs. And he quotes the Yerushalmi that basically says it has to do with if a person could uphold the observance of the Torah for others and neglects to do so. Let's see the sforno on pasuk chavav. Asher lo yakibas devrei Torah azos lasos osam shlo yikayim v'yodeh sheroi lasos es kulam. We're talking about a person that doesn't accept that it's appropriate to do all the mitzvos. Avotio ezo mitzvah mehem levatala etzlo, but that there's this given mitzvah that the person says, I don't think it's relevant. V'hu achashod davar echad. This references a person who has specific attitude about a specific mitzvah in the Torah that he shows he's not interested in. I apologize. That really is very similar to what the Ramban said. I think I made a mistake when citing it. Excuse me. Okay, chapter 28, verse 10. Chapter 28, verse 10. We're now saying that if you do the mitzvos correctly, God will bless you in all kinds of ways. These are the introductory psukim to the Tochacha, to the harsh psukim. And all of the people of the land will see that the name of God is upon you, v'yaru mimeka, and they will have reverence for you. That sounds great. It's an interesting image to think about. How do people see that the name of God is upon us? What does that mean? So I just thought the Orach Chaim on this pasuk is very interesting, somewhat surprising, at least to me. Orach Chaim on pasuk Yod, v'ra'u kol ha'mei ha'aretz, ga'amza hu mechavein k'neged shmiras mitzvos lo saseh. He says we're actually talking about diligence in not violating the prohibitions of the Torah. Ki kol zman she'adam shomer atzum me'averos ein selam elokim over me'al panav. If a person is diligent to not sin, the godliness within him never leaves his face. All creatures, whether it be humans, whether it be animals, have a certain trepidation before him. On the other hand, if a person acts in a disgusting way, the godliness on the person's face moves away from them. And he says that's the pshat in the pasuk. When God tells Cain that he's going to have to be a wanderer because of his sin of killing Hevel, what does Cain say to God? Vayakol motzi yahargeni. Anyone who finds me will kill me. And so God places a sign on Cain that people should leave him alone. The Orach Chaim says, you know what Cain is saying? Cain is saying, because I've sinned, I don't have the same presence as I did before. It's an interesting idea. Every now and then a person meets someone who just seems to be, there just seems to be something very, like an aura almost about them. You wonder if that fits in some way with the Orach Chaim. An interesting thing to think about. Okay, so this morning we discussed the pasuk of cursed will be the one who won't fulfill the words of the Torah. The Ramban brought down a number of pshatim. And we also discussed the Orach Chaim for how it would be that the nations of the world would see that the name of Hashem is upon us.